mind me, it's just me fanning myself with my pesos. The first one is the 2 pesos Bartolomé Mirtre, and when you turn it around, bam, house, right? The next one is the 5 pesos, and this is José de San Martín. Yet you turn it around and like fierce battle monument kind of shit on the other side. Then this is the 10 pesos, and here you have, this is Manuel Vergano, and then you turn it around and you have the avenue in Buenos Aires, so another monument. And here's the next one, the 20 pesos, and this is Juan Manuel Rosas, caudillo from the 19th century. You turn it around and you see a bunch of boats. The last one is the 100 pesos note, and this one is the diva for the day. This is Evita Perón, the 100 pesos note, but when you turn it around, something changes. Motherhood. It's not even an Argentinian piece. This is on the Ara Pacis Augustea, the altar of peace mausoleum to Augustus Caesar in Rome. What the hell is it doing in a... Oh, Italian immigrants. That makes sense. But why do the men get to do, whereas the woman gets to sit? I mean, you notice the difference, right? Tell me in the comments what you think. I'm not the only one that's seeing this shit, right? Salve, Divonauts. Welcome to Cronista de Indias, the Her Story YouTube channel by Dr. Andrea Lorena Fernandez. Please subscribe and follow on Instagram. Check out the podcast at Why Do We Read This on Classics and Pop Culture, which I co-host with my friend Dr. Rebecca L. Salua from Baruch College. Links in the description below. Thank you for supporting my research. In the last episode 25 on Frida Kahlo's personal letters to Abby Rockefeller and Dolores del Rio et al., we studied a little bit of her self-promotion strategies from 1932 to 48. We used the analysis of the self-portrait at the Mexican-US border painting from 1932, Chicas Modernas theory, or the development of transnational womanhood in the interbellum. Secondly, we studied 7 of Frida's personal letters spanning the Great Depression and World War II to ask the question, why is Frida Kahlo a feminist icon? In this current episode 26, as we announced in the preview, we are studying EVITA, Eva Perón Duarte, women's suffrage, her autobiography, and performing national motherhood. The first portion of this lesson is going to be on feminism, suffrage, and Argentina until 1946, a brief summary of Peronism from 1946 to 55, a review of Eva's speech on women's right to vote from 1947, and her autobiography, My Mission in Life, from 51. First portion of the lesson, feminism, suffrage, and Argentina until 1946. By the time Eva Perón arrives and becomes First Lady of Argentina, feminists have been politically active for decades. Evita is not a pioneer in women's suffrage, only the final catalyst. The builders of the feminist movement in Latin America are many. Here, at the Cronista de Indias YouTube channel, we studied 2. In episode 21, we reviewed the contributions of Maria Abella Ramirez in her Basic Plan for a Vindication of the Rights of Women from 1904. This is suffrage and first-wave feminism. We wondered if it was cultural imperialism or a product of Europhilia. We also talked about the influence of the rights of men adapted by Mary Wollstonecraft and the Declaration of Sentiments. We give the context of the first wave feminism growing into second wave in the 1900s to 1960s. Note that this is a gradual transition in Latin America. We also reviewed notes by Francesca Miller in Latin American Women and Search for Social Justice from 1991, where the scholar points to why suffrage came later in Latin American countries for women than it did for their sisters in the United States and Britain. In episode 22 about Ernestina Lopez, her keynote at Argentina's first International Women's Congress from 1910, the event reveals the relationship between education and patriotism. She asks, what is feminism in 1910? And we review it in the episode. Go back to see it. I'll put a card up here on it. This episode 22 reviews the question of women's education and economic condition and the continuity between first and second wave feminisms. Es la hora del peronismo. Peronism, let's give you a brief summary. It happens from 1946 to 1955, and it's pretty important. Some key concepts are anti-establishment, anti-oligarchy, favors economic protectionism over dependence on foreign capital, pluralism, and laborism. Also caters to a constituency of the urban proletariat, or the descamisados. The timeline. As of 1943, Juan Perón becomes Minister of Labor after participating in the military coup of the same year. In 1944, Juan and Eva meet at a post-earthquake charity event. In 46, Juan is elected president. He introduces programs in social reforms benefiting the working class, labor unions, and state involvement in the economy. No, he and many progressive insular heads of state thrived in Latin America because the USA was far too busy looking away in Europe because of World War II. Women's suffrage bill was introduced to the Senate in 1947. Eva also in this year performs the radio speech on women's right to vote on February 26. We will review this later. Eva Perón does the Rainbow Tour of Europe alone and meets Spain's Francisco Franco and Pope Pius XII. In this year, she also starts the Women's Peronist Party. The House of Representatives sanctions women's suffrage bill and approves Law 13,010. In 1948, Eva Perón Foundation is founded to provide monetary assistance and scholarships to poor, gifted children and build homes, schools, hospitals, and orphanages. The Eva Perón Foundation had funds of over 3 billion pesos from donors and Peronist Congress and controlled 200 million on exchange rate, employed over 14,000 workers, purchased 500,000 sewing machines, 400,000 pairs of shoes, 200,000 cooking pots, and these were given out to women in need in a system that is called clientelism. If you have any questions about how big these projects were, check out the entirety of EVITA City. It's literally a city in tiny version for children. The organization was also instrumental in promoting equality in healthcare. It operates until 1955 when Perón is overthrown. In 1951, EVITA considers running as Juan's vice president. Although this angered the military, the populace held a mass rally on August 22, 1951, chanting "Evita vicepresidente, ahora evita ahora." The renunciation to the candidacy happens because Evita ends up with hysterectomy to eradicate cervical cancer, and her health declines ever after. The publication of her autobiography, La Razón de mi Vida, or My Mission in Life, happens in 1951 as well. On May 7, 1952, on her 33rd birthday, Evita is declared spiritual leader of the nation by Congress. By this point, she was performing at state events with a brace underneath her fur coats to help her stand. She was that ill. In July 26, 1952, she passes away, followed by a regally and magnificent state funeral resembling a Roman triumphal procession, necromancy, and her corpse being lost for a few decades is impressive. In an article titled Evita or Madonna, Whom Will History Remember?, Tomás Eloy Martinez writes, Latin American myths are more resistant than they seem to be. Not even the mass exodus of the Cuban raft people or the rapid decomposition and isolation of Fidel Castro's regime have eroded the triumphal myth of Che Guevara, which remains alive in the dreams of thousands of young people in Latin America, Africa, and Europe. Che, as well as Evita, symbolize certain native but effective beliefs, the hope of a better world, a life sacrifice on the altar of the disinherited, the humiliated, the poor of the earth. They are myths which somehow reproduce the image of Christ, unquote. Alright, so let's study Eva Perón as a political performer in her speech on women's right to vote. It was done on radio on February 26, 1947, and it utilizes something called the princeps rhetoric. This comes all the way back from ancient Rome. It means I first among equals. Women's struggles are Evita's struggles in the speech. Once again, I demand your support because my struggle, the struggle of all Argentine women, cannot be given up until victory is sure. I address all of you, then, with the deep conviction of speaking from a common tongue, a language that is truthful, patriotic, and above all, profoundly feminine, unquote. By equating struggle with femininity, EVITA creates a sense of national sisterhood. To be patriotic is to be female. Let's not focus on how problematic binaries are. To her, it's a political tool. She argues that female suffrage benefits men, quote, a protector of civic faith, a testimony to national responsibility, a credit to faith in the men that rule. The women's vote will be the most powerful weapon ever brandished for the decisive conquest of the Argentine soul, unquote. In this speech, for Eva, women are protectors of public faith and voting will ensure their participation on national motherhood, the common good. Furthermore, women's intuition predisposes them to detecting falsehood, making them more reasonable constituency. According to Eva, I don't think we're any more reasonable than anyone else. Women, in her worldview, have faith in men that rule, even when enfranchised. Check out how she's double dealing here. She's selling the notion of women's suffrage by making men comfortable with the idea that women will remain in their place and even protect patriarchy. She continues, quote, in short, they contribute to the electoral movement with the clarity, the sixth sense, the portentous faculty of intuition, seeing the right through the tricks of politicians and the fickle games of human passion, unquote. According to her, women are already knowledgeable in human rights, so it makes sense to give them the right to vote. They will only extend that to everyone else. And because they accept their place, they will continuously support their men contributing to the national wealth of the country. There is a marked sense of Argentinian exceptionalism in this speech, the new man idea. This is a concept that you see Perón mention, but then Che Guevara reuses later, or I don't know, parallelly develops. I continue to quote from her speech. The hour of the woman has arrived in Argentina and will be a precursor to American rights movements. Okay, so, I don't know how else to put this. Ecuador got the right to vote first in 1929, Eva. 47, you're kind of late, but she's kind of selling it to the other Argentinas in a way that makes them feel as though they come first. Argentina in the speech appears at the forefront of women's suffrage. Indeed, Eva would have us believe it's the first country to invent the universal ballot, but the truth is that 8 countries beat Argentina. Ecuador in 1929, Brazil in 1932, Uruguay 32, Cuba 1934, El Salvador in 39, Dominican Republic in 42, 45 is for Guatemala, but also Panama, and then comes Argentina, which is, they're kind of sort of in the middle of the race. While Eva is lying here, she was indeed a catalyst for women's suffrage after 1947, but not the cause as her fans would have you believe. And by that I mean my abuela. No, I was like, I have like chancla PTSD. Check out episode 4. It's a thing. Evita continues. However, female suffrage means responsibility. Oh my gosh, he sounds like Uncle Ben. It means a sacred commitment. Let us not forget that woman represents the home. In fact, the home is the cradle of new man. It is his education, the exercise of his public faith. This is where the weapon of suffrage is extraordinarily valuable for women. Okay. These moral values are Peronista values. The citizens enfranchised women will educate at home are the new men, aka Perón's men. The speech goes on saying, quote, women will defend what is permanent with their vote better than men will. When choosing, women define themselves in relation to the preservation of the home, the family, the Catholic faith, discarding everything that will be opposed to the moral scruples and Argentine values, unquote. In summary, women are the most Argentinian citizens that exist in this speech. they transmit tradition. To gain suffrage is to protect the patriarchy in this speech. It is far from feminist. In the single year of 1947, Eva Perón achieved what Maria Bella Ramirez and Ernestina Lopez fought for decades, and she did it by telling the patriarchy that what they always want to hear, that we're good domesticated girls. Her strategy, that is, reassuring men that suffrage equals faith in their ability to rule, was more effective than previous strategies. Lastly, Juan and Eva Perón planned women's suffrage to coincide with his second run for president in 1951. And it worked! Women overwhelmingly voted for him. They threw the ballot out and they were like, girl, we're going. Vamos a votar. Vamos. On to portion 3 of the lesson, My Mission in Life, the autobiography published on October 15, 1951. Once again, she employs the Princeps rhetoric clause of I first among equals, once again deferring to her husband's authority. Quote, I was not, nor am I, anything more than a humble woman, a sparrow in an immense flock of sparrows, but Perón was and is a gigantic condor that flies high and sure among the summits and near God. If it had not been for him who came down to my level and taught me how to fly in another fashion, I would have never known what a condor is like, nor ever have been able to contemplate the marvelous and magnificent immenseness of my people, unquote. Okay, Juan is the condor, the father and the lead educator of the whole nation. This is really confusion, oh my God. Starting with Eva the sparrow, the commonest and illegitimatest of birds. She was illegitimate. Really? You don't have to be a condor to see that Argentina is big. Just look at the fucking map. Oh, and the condor doesn't know about political borders. To him, Paraguay is just the same shit as Argentina minus the ocean water. Note the Marianismo, the cult of female spiritual superiority, or the sparrow, is directly opposed and in service of machismo, the cult of male virility, or the condor. Quote, reason, with me, has often given way to emotion, and so to explain the life I lead today, that is to say, what I am doing now out of motives that spring from the bottom of my heart, oh God, telenovela, that feeling of indignation when confronted with injustice, unquote. Emotion, not reason, moves Eva's actions, at least publicly. Her motivation is ridding the nation of injustice. See her tirade about rich people versus poor people. I really think the autobiography, the meat of the autobiography, is her confirming to everybody that she's not a feminist. That's right, not a feminist. Doesn't want to be associated with them. What she says about feminists is actually quite alarming because it hasn't changed. It's the same shit they say about feminists today. Quote, I realize above all that I began my work in a women's movement because Perón's cause demanded it. It all began little by little. But it kind of happened in a year, girl. I don't get it. Política. Before I realized it, I was heading a women's political movement, and with it had to accept spiritual leadership of the women in my country, unquote. Remember, 8 countries achieved suffrage without a fairy godmother, but EVITA must justify her existence to her political opponents, the oligarchy, the church, and the military, the trinity of doom. Those are all related. Those people are all like inbred and related. The women's movement is not inbred, and the women's movement predates Eva by at least 3 decades, yet here it seems as though they sprang together. Peronismo appropriates and redefines feminism to suit its needs by making it a patriotism that is maternal. Quote, be ridiculous? Join the nucleus of women with a grudge against women and against men, as has happened to innumerable feminist leaders? I was not an old maid, nor even ugly enough for such a post, which from the time of the English suffragettes down to today generally belongs almost exclusively to women of this type. Women whose first impulse undoubtedly has been to be like men, unquote. She would have achieved nothing had she been associated with the feminists. To protect herself, she must deface them. That's the wrong tactic, girl. You don't take out another sister to put yourself in her place. However, it did get women the right to vote. To achieve this defacement, she calls them ridiculous, manly, old maids, men/women, hating, tradition bashing, and ugly. So, how do you keep women, womanly, Eva? Answer the question. She says, every day, thousands of women forsake the feminine camp to begin to live like men. They work like them. They prefer like them the street to the home. They are not resigned to being either mothers or wives, a masculinization of our sex, unquote. Women, according to her, belong in the home. Outside is for men, separate spheres, remember, 19th century. This is coming from the woman who left her town in Junín for Buenos Aires at 15, alone. If you're getting the feeling that she's sanitizing her public image, you're absolutely right. This is a trained actor, y'all. The role of a lifetime is upon her. She arrives at economic independence like Virginia Woolf as the only tool for keeping women in the home. If they earn a living for housework, she thinks, and childcare, why would they ever want to leave? Quote, I think one should commence by fixing a small monthly allowance for every woman who gets married, from the day of her marriage, a salary paid to the mothers, all the nation, and which comes out of all the earnings of all the workers in the country, including women, unquote. Wait. She wanted to institute wifely welfare fund. What? We don't even have maternity leave in the USA as of 2020, and here's Eva in 1951 like, let's pay mom a salary because that solves things for her. I don't think that such a thing would be taken seriously here and right now. Do you think it'd work? Would it make women more domestic? I mean, I want to get out, even if I'm getting paid. Perhaps not. Women have more choices than just outside and inside the home. Check out influencer moms. That's like a combination of both. But the most important thing for Eva is safeguarding the nation's morality. Remember, she's spiritual leader. Quote, in this way, many women would be saved from the delinquency and prostitution, which are the fruits of their economic slavery, unquote. So, to eliminate sex workers, pay moms a salary. I don't know if that equation actually works, but Evita's social welfare programs and clientelism are not foreign to her USA fans. You gotta look at Eleanor Roosevelt for Evita's North American prima, her counterpart. Peronismo is much like the New Deal, and its effects reverberate through Argentina's society to this day. Es la hora de la conclusión, señores, la conclusión. In this episode 26 of Latin American Divas, titled Eva Perón on Women's Right to Vote, My Mission in Life and Performing National Motherhood, we learned about feminism and suffrage in Argentina until 1946, when Evita shows up on the stage, literally. Peronism, a brief summary from 1946 to 1955, and we reviewed On Women's Right to Vote, radio speech from 47, My Mission in Life, autobiography from 51. Dominicanas! Woo! So Dominicanas, we're going to the Dominican Republic. It's the Mirabal sisters' time with state terror, human rights, second wave feminism, and Latin America after 1959. We're going to stay with the Dominicanas for a few episodes as they offer a unique window into transnationalism and gender. Gracias. Gracias, muchas gracias. Thank you for taking the time to learn about Latin American divas right here at Cronista de Indias, where new episodes drop whenever I can film this. Please hit the subscribe button or follow me on Instagram so you don't miss an episode. As always, a million thanks, bechitos, for viewing and for liking and sharing the episodes. Do epic shit, girl. Epic shit. Well, you're girl not. Just do it.